lads, welcome back to episode number 35 of the toonTALK podcast, brought to you by Magpie 24/7. I am joined today by Kyle. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, mate, all good. A lot more positive after a win, which is always good. A win for the first time in a while, it seems, but it was good to get a win back on the board, and I think the worry a little bit lingering that maybe Newcastle are in a relegation fight. Good to see that put to rest yesterday. So that's yeah, it's more of a relief than anything else, but good to be back into the win column and everything like that. So yeah, pretty good.
Absolutely. I think it is relevant of you to mention the fact that there were some mumblings in the fan base this week about us maybe getting dragged into this relegation scrap now that Tottenham have finally got their first win on the board. Um, I was never that worried about relegation, but it is good to get these 3 points and to know for sure that 45 would be a record to get relegated on. Um, I think your camera has cut out.
It has. I was just moving.
No worries, no worries. There we are. We're back. So, it is good to not have any potential relegation scare this season, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that it has been a disappointing season. But let's focus on a less disappointing game, one of the few less disappointing games in recent months, this weekend's game against Brighton. So for anyone who didn't see, we won the game 3-1 at home. And before we get to talking about the football in this game, I think we need to touch upon the starting 11 firstly, because when that lineup came out, there was a lot of talk amongst Newcastle fans. What was your
Yeah.
opinion when you saw that team?
I've seen the team. I just laughed, to be honest with you. It was just like very, very typical of what has been the couple of the fundamental issues within the club over the past couple of weeks and months. And I think the one of the main valid points that a lot of Eddie Howe people that are against Eddie Howe have at the minute is that certain people get picked based on based on things that aren't football and like related kind of thing, where it's like it's almost like Eddie picks his favourites is kind of where it's spoken about and stuff like that. And to be fair, that team that was put out yesterday from the start, when it came out, I was just like, that's very much what I expected. But I didn't want that. I wanted a couple of changes. I wanted Baltimore to start after his positive impact against Arsenal. But he went with Nick Pope, who should have been sent off against Arsenal. And you know, like there was a couple of players in that team. I'm thinking, how the fuck are they getting starts? But they are under the tag of it can be seen as Eddie's mates and stuff. So yeah, when the team first came out, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little bit frustrated. I laughed it. I laughed when I first seen it, and I was just like, for fuck's sake, like, just not gonna change and not gonna learn, is he? Because going into the game yesterday, I felt very pessimistic. I just wasn't looking forward to it at all. I just thought like we wouldn't have enough on the day and would just kind of repeat the same mistakes over and over again, kind of thing.
Mhm. Well, before I give my opinion on the starting 11, which I'm already going to spoil a little bit, kind of resembles your opinion, let's firstly listen to what Paul's thoughts were on that starting lineup.
So back to Newcastle for the penultimate time this campaign, and today we go up against a very, very, very good Brighton team who historically we don't do very well against at all. Team news, I was hoping for a couple of changes. I was hoping to see Lewis Hall back, possibly a change of formation, Osula, Voltemade, Vissa, Voltemade, a combination of something like that. What I got was anything but. I think just the one change. Obviously, Joe Linton comes back in, and that's not a shock in itself. We're full strength in midfield. Willock moved to the left hand side. Murphy on the right hand side, who had, well, I keep saying he's had a shocker, but I keep saying this. When was the last time he had a decent game? To be honest, probably last time Isak was here. Or has that been a little bit too harsh? Look, I think he's all right going forward, getting crosses in when he's in the right frame of mind, but defensively, not at it. It's the defence and goal. Again, that's a bit of an eyebrow raiser. Pope was allegedly brought in because of his height and his aerial dominance against Arsenal. And he's retained his place. I thought Ramsdale might come in. I'm a bit surprised by that one. I think Ramsdale is the best of a bad bunch, if I'm being honest. Pope is horrific. And I just hope he doesn't cost us another game today and yet even more points, because it's massive today. Win, Spurs lose, we're safe. Anything else, we know what will happen, but we're safe if that happens. You lose today, Spurs win tomorrow, and it's 5 points and it's squeaky bum time. The one major gripe I've got with the team before a ball has been kicked is Lewis Hall. For me, he's our player of the season. For me, up there with Bruno, he's our most important and influential player that we've got. When I saw the team at Burn, okay, yeah, Burn fine with maybe playing in the centre back. I wondered who'd been dropped, Botman or Chow, assuming it was Botman. No, because he's playing at full back. Apologies about the voice, it's going even before I get in. Yeah, he's played Burn at left back. It never works for me. He's not a left back. You wouldn't ask a fish to climb a tree. You know, you wouldn't ask, I don't know, a monkey to go and swim in a river, would you? It's the same sort of thing. You play it to somebody's strength, you don't play it to the weaknesses. Now, Dan Burn, he loves Newcastle United. He's a great professional. He's done fantastic things for the club. He's a legend for what he did, cup final and all that sort of thing. But he's not a fullback. And how you can leave our best player on the bench, like I say, it's horses for courses. It's, you know, tomato, it's all that sort of thing between him and Bruno. It's close. But Lewis Hall, there's no doubt about it, is skillful. Lewis Hall has been fantastic for 99% of this season. Yet the 1% is used as a justification to drop him. His 1% of drop off in form, right, I've got to drop him. He's not playing well, we're conceding goals. The problem hasn't been Lewis Hall. The problem has been in goal. The problem has been literally everywhere else. The midfield setup, I could go on. You know? The problem has not been, and it's never been, Lewis Hall, in my opinion. Pope can play 10, 15 terrible games and still keep getting picked all of the time by Eddie Howe because he's in the leadership group. He's one of his favourites. However, Hall, one bad game and he's out. The same rationale is not used for the likes of Lewis Hall. One bad game, 2 bad games, you're out. Your Popes of the world just get away with it all the time. And it's not the only one, but there's players who play regardless of their form, consistency or anything. They play all the time. And it just seems so unfair. And I think we risk losing him if we're not going to be playing him week in and week out with a player, you know, who literally had Jamal in his back pocket not literally a few weeks ago. The world was raving. He could arguably be the starting left back for England in the World Cup, and yet he's not good enough for Newcastle United in a relegation battle, fighting for our lives, desperate, and he's not good enough for that. The logic is off the charts as far as I'm concerned. It really is. Look, in Eddie Howe we trust and stuff like that, but if you see batshit crazy, you've got to call it out. And to me, this is a crazy choice. And I just hope at the end of it, we've got the 3 points. Because if not, it is going to be used as a rod to continue to strike and blow away. Look, I've been an Eddie Howe supporter all the way through, but I will critique where critique is necessary, and I will call things out when I think things are necessary to call out. And this, for me, is one of them. I don't understand it. I don't know why we're not playing Hall. If you want to play Burn, accommodate them in the middle. But, yeah, look. End of the game, all I wanted to be doing, I don't want to be coming back talking about formations, changes, substitutes, refereeing decisions, none of that. I want to be coming back to you talking about 3 hugely important points and not having to rant and rage. We've got to stop these, 5 defeats in a row. Please, Newcastle United, 3 points today.
And then my opinion would very much be kind of the same as yours. I was firstly taken aback and a bit disappointed by the starting lineup, and the more I was starting to think about it, the more frustrated I got. It wouldn't also be fair to not say this after we won the game. But Dan Burn over Lewis Hall baffled me as much as everybody else. Lewis Hall has arguably been, if not for Bruno Guimaraes, our best player this season, and
Yeah.
definitely our most creative player this season. And when you are struggling for goals, it is really hard to justify taking someone like Lewis Hall out of the team, especially when you're facing pacey wingers like we know Brighton do have. And the attack really baffled me as well. Pope's selection, I don't understand why he's been brought back into the fold. He's been here now for two games back, and he, like you said, he should have been sent off against Arsenal. And yesterday he almost gave away 2 goals on 2 different occasions. So I don't understand what Pope what he has over Eddie to keep on blackmailing him into a starting 11 berth, but it is really getting on my nerves, and I'm not even that big of a fan of Ramsdale, so that's kind of where we're at. And then for the attack, Willock, Osula, Murphy. I think I would have started Osula as well. He's been in brilliant form, carried that form through to this game as well. Murphy, I was very surprised and even against starting, but I have to admit, I think Eddie has been proven right on the Jacob Murphy selection. And then for Joe Willock, he's not necessarily a winger, so I'm always going to have my question marks when you're starting him. But I think he had a very, very decent first half an hour and afterwards dropped off a little bit. So that attack on paper is a bit toothless, which is worrying when we've been toothless all season. But I think a lot, not all, but a lot of the question marks people had for that starting 11, Eddie has kind of been proven right in this particular game. That's not to say that hasn't been the case for most of the games this season, because there have been a lot of game selection errors, in my opinion, when it comes to Eddie. And like you say, I don't necessarily think he has his favorites when it comes to you are going to start for me every single time, but I do think there are players who have to do less on training pitch to impress Eddie Howe because of the image he already has of those players in his head. So him saying in press conferences that he makes his team selections completely based on what he sees in training, I do think he believes that, but I don't necessarily think it's completely true.
Yeah, I feel I'm totally with you. I seen the team yesterday, and I was just like, well, what does Walter Moore have to do to get a start? He came on, he was a bright spark against Arsenal. The one bit of creativity which Wissa put over the bar, and even later in the game, which we'll touch on to, but Wissa came on, and it was like he got rewarded for missing that opportunity against Arsenal, and the person who created it just didn't see the pitch at all. But the Lewis Hall one for me is the worst one. That lad's been unbelievable for Newcastle this season. Consistently in the team and consistently doing well, and to be dropped for Dan Burn, who was a centre back. I would have kind of got it if he'd have dropped Botman and put Dan Burn at centre back, because I don't think Botman's particularly been great. However, I think dropping one of your most dynamic players and one of your most consistent players for Dan Burn, it's just idiotic for me. And I think it's, even though we did win yesterday, I think there's still bits of play from Lewis Hall setting up that Whistler chance, showing what he brings to the team going forward. And yeah, he probably could have done better for the Bournemouth goal a couple of weeks ago defensively, but like I don't get how certain players get held to a mistake and others don't. Like Eddie Howe said after the game against Arsenal last week, that Dan Burn has never let Newcastle United down at fullback, when even as far back as 2 seasons ago, there's literally evidence of teams constantly targeting Dan Burn because he was seen as a weakness in Newcastle's side, and he would make mistake on mistake. In fact, the two of Anthony Elanga's best games for Nottingham Forest were against Dan Burn at left back for Newcastle. Is probably why we signed him. So you know what I mean? It's like I feel like there's, like you say with the training thing, where there is certain people in that team that have to impress less in training to get a start. For me, there's a less of a part of an error in place for certain players. So if Lewis Hall's playing, if he makes one error, he gets dropped immediately. But if Dan Burn makes that same mistake, I don't think he gets dropped. And for me, I think that's just a really poor way to look at it. And even when Lewis Hall came on, he showed that attacking ability. When he came on, and he continues to be one of our best players, and just a frustrating one. And like Dan Burn scored a great header yesterday, and he didn't play particularly badly, but I just think actively dropping one of your players and then saying afterwards you went with the players you trust, it kind of just doesn't make sense to me as to why you would say that. It's just really, really baffling to me. Like literally 6 weeks ago, Lewis Hall put in the best left back performance I've ever seen from a Newcastle United player against Barcelona at St James's Park, where he didn't just mark Lamine Yamal out of a game, he absolutely dominated him. And like we're talking about Lamine Yamal, like the best young winger on the planet. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not a coincidence. It's Lewis Hall being one of the best in his position, and he's one of the key players at left back for England, his country, and he's one of the best in the league as well. And for him to be dropped for a centre back, for me, it's an insult. It really is. Like I just can't fathom as to why you would drop someone as talented as someone as consistent as Lewis Hall over a long period of time, over one error, over one mistake, and then go on and then say in previous interviews and stuff how Dan Burn, who's made a lot of mistakes at left back, say he hasn't made any mistakes, and he goes with that, and it's just like fair enough if you want to start Dan Burn, but for me, Lewis Hall's one of the first names on the team sheet, and you drop him. It's like when I first seen the team sheet, that's how I felt, and I felt really embarrassed because it's like Lewis Hall should be playing in these games. Like he has been unbelievable for Newcastle this season. It's one of the best seasons I've seen from a left back ever in a Newcastle shirt, and he's been a shining light in this team. And for him to get dropped is it like I say, it's an insult. I even says to Paul yesterday, um, it's basically like putting Walter Marder in goal and then expecting Nick Pope not to have something to say about it. Like you'd be insulted someone out of your position coming into your position and being told that he's the preferred choice. It's just crazy to me.
So yeah, I completely agree, especially on Lewis Hall. His exclusion from the starting 11 is completely baffling to me, and is something which I hope we won't find any repercussions from in the future, because this team needs to be built around Lewis Hall for the future. He is potentially one of the best left backs England has ever seen. His ceiling is so unbelievably high, even higher in my opinion than, for example, Tino Livramento's ceiling. So we just have to do everything in our power to keep him around and to keep him happy, because I do think he's one of the keys to a successful future for Newcastle United. But let's talk a bit more about the game itself then, because we actually took the lead pretty early in the game, and this is one of the points where I am saying that Eddie Howe was kind of vindicated in one of his team selections. Jacob Murphy putting on pressure on Bart Verbrugge, who was trying to come out and claim a bit of a loose ball. And because of Jacob Murphy's pressure on Bart Verbrugge and a bit of a brain fart on his behalf, he got the ball just past him. Bart Verbrugge makes the contact, and that is something which I think only Jacob Murphy does in this attack, is stay on his feet and get the cross in the box as soon as possible. And it's actually, without looking, a pin perfect cross. Because there's no goalkeeper in goal, it kind of gets overlooked and made out as if it's easy to do, but it is a pinpoint perfect cross on Will Osula's head. And there are still defenders in the box who could be defending Will Osula, who could try and make a goal line clearance, but all Osula has to do is just to make contact with it, and we are 1-0 up, which is a really good goal, and really very much down to Jacob Murphy's work ethic. And then for the second goal, I don't necessarily think that goal particularly vindicates the Lewis Hall Dan Burn choice, because I think Dan Burn scores that header if he starts, like you said, above Sven Botman, who has had a shaky few games for us. I think every single defender has had a shaky time, so I think not a single player could be felt hard done by for being dropped, apart from Lewis Hall, because of what he's done for us this season in games where he's been our only creative force, our only driving factor to try and create a goal out of nothing. So those still are baffling choices, despite what is a very, very good goal from Dan Burn. And what is also really, really nice about that goal is it is an assist from Bruno Guimaraes on his 150th Newcastle United appearance, on the head of Dan Burn, who makes his 150th Newcastle appearance in all competitions. So that is a really nice bit of symmetry right there. Really happy for those two players as well. Absolute club legends. And a nice 2-0 lead to go into the break, which actually could have been 3 or 4-0. Am I right?
Yeah, it was such a crazy half. Like both teams had good chances in the first half, but we did look relatively strong in the first half. A lot to unpack there with both goals. I think both goals were kind of showing what we've been missing with not having Bruno in the team. Because the ball over the top to Murphy is directly from Bruno Guimaraes, and it's a really nice move actually. But Bruno manages to pick out Murphy, Verbruggen makes the error and commits, and if we don't get a goal from that, or Murphy doesn't play on, it probably is a penalty as well. So so yeah, it's a situation where like we've needed Bruno and Bruno's managed to carry us forward and it's done really well in that aspect. But um but yeah, I think with Verbruggen making the mistake he made, and in the second half he made a mistake as well for the Barnes goal. But I thought I would give Verbruggen a bit of a watch because we've been linked with him a lot recently. Because the two Premier League proven goalkeepers we've been linked with is James Trafford and Bart Verbruggen from Brighton, and I'm not convinced by Verbruggen at all.
Agreed.
If Newcastle pay 40 million for him, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Like it'd be a really poor bit of business from Newcastle to go and get him. Like it's just not a good goalkeeper at all. He's probably an average goalkeeper, but if you're paying 40 million for a goalkeeper, he needs to be your number one and he needs to be quite good. Don't think he solves our issues at all.
Completely
Um,
agreed.
but yeah, but the but Jacob Murphy gets back up on his feet, and it is a good cross into the box. Osula, who I want to shout him out. Actually, I thought he was absolutely outstanding in that first half. He put himself about some really good flicks and turns and stuff like that. And I think there's a really good, because the way he runs in off the right side and he's able to be so direct and such a threat and how he puts himself about. I think there's a really good right winger there. Um, I do agree with what Paul has said in the past, in it being like, as a centre forward, he does struggle from the start sometimes. Yesterday not being like the key example of that because he was brilliant in the first half. However, I think as a right winger or as a winger of sort, like you're seeing against Man United, where he's able to drive in from that right hand side, he is really good there. And with Newcastle having problems on the right hand side this season, with Murphy and Alanga being underwhelming to say the least. Like, I think there's a really good chance Asula could really stamp his mark there because I think we're looking for a striker in any way in the summer, and we'll be probably looking for a right winger as well. So for me, I think that's a really good that'd be a good move to push him out wide. And see what he can do from that position, even if it's a rotation option with a potential Alanga or another right winger to bring them in. But I think Asula would be good from that, good
Who
from
would
that
you
position.
rather keep, Wissa or Osula?
Oh, I'd keep Asula all day, mate. Like it's not even close. Like he's such a dynamic striker. He puts himself about. He's a handful, and he's good at pressing the back four as well, which I know is fundamental with the system and stuff like that. So yeah, I think there is a player there, and he scored 3 in his last 4 as well. So for me, I think there's a really good centre forward there. He's got all the hallmarks of a good centre forward in a couple of years. He's still only 22. He's still got
Mhm.
time to continue to develop and stuff like that. But yeah, I think he's actually had a really good season. I know we're attacking options this year haven't been great, but I think when he started, whether that be in the Carabao Cup or whether it be in the Champions League or whenever, I think he's been very good when he's played. Let alone the moments he had against Man United, getting a goal against Liverpool as well when we're down to 10 men. He has had a really good season by all accounts, and I think there's a real opportunity for him to kick on. I know he's been linked away in previous transfer windows to Frankfurt and stuff like that, but Newcastle will be making a massive mistake by getting rid of this lad. I really do. I think as hard as it is for us to say, I think if any striker is leaving in the summer, it is probably Walter Mara, especially with news coming out just before we clicked record that the board are going to stick with Eddie Howe going into the season. We'll touch on that in a bit. But I think
Mhm.
with that news coming through, I do think Walter Mara will be away. I don't see a future with him at the club if Eddie Howe's still manager. So yeah, I think Wissa and Osula will be two of the three forwards next season. It just depends who else to bring in with him.
Mhm. Um, I, I mean, stylistically, I actually think you're right. I think Eddie Howe would probably prefer Wisa and Osula over Osula and Woltemade. But I actually think the hierarchy, given the fact that Eddie won't be in charge of transfers anymore, like he's been in previous transfer windows, I could see them overruling him and selling Wisa and sticking with Voltemade, because with Voltemade you still have the potential upside of him turning into a world class player, which I think he very much has the talent to be. Whereas with Wisa, the club themselves have reportedly said already that they are willing to accept a loss now to kind of right the wrongs of last season before they start to become financial black holes and financial pits. So let's say a Fenerbahce, for example, offers us 25 million for Wisa. I could very much see the club taking that. And like you said, the narrative around Will Osula has completely shifted, and it should be completely shifted towards keeping him because he is phenomenally gifted, especially athletically. He has such great pace. He is really, really strong, both in the duel and when shielding the ball. And I also think the more we see him in the starting lineup, the more I am noticing that I think a lot of other players in our starting lineup prefer him as our number 9. Because, for example, Bruno Guimaraes yesterday had a really, really good game yet again. Why? Because he could do what he likes and is best at, which is pick up ball from deep, make yourself available, and turn around and start set up an attack. But given how dysfunctional we have been up front this season, he has not necessarily always had the opportunity to do so. But when Will Osula is on the pitch, he always offers an out ball. He always wants to be sent through on goal or given something to run onto, even if it takes him wide as well. Because like we've seen against Manchester United, for example, he doesn't mind going wide and taking it inside as well. I saw him do it against Brighton as well a couple of times on down the left hand side, where he was picking up the ball and then trying to beat a man to get across into somewhere where he should probably be, but he can't be doing everything. So he is showing a lot of promise, a lot of desire, which is also something which has been lacking in a lot of our players this season. So yeah, an absolutely ginormous breath of fresh air, and massive compliments to Will Osula for grabbing this opportunity more than anything.
Yeah, I think I think he has. He's been brilliant the last 3 or 4 games. He's took his chances when they've came. Like obviously he can be a little bit clumsy at times and stuff like that, but like I just think there's a lot of potential there, and there is a really high ceiling. And me and Paul have been back and forth on this one. Where he's like, we should get rid of Asula and stuff, and I'm like, nah. I think there's a player there, even though I don't see him as like a starter as such, but if you're chasing a game or you need a bit of something, you need a Will Osula on the bench,
Yeah.
just as a just as someone who's gonna come on and he's gonna drive the team forward. Fulham at home earlier this season's a great example. He came on with Alanga later in the game, just drove up the field and managed to win the game 2-1 from what was a really flat game of football, and we managed to win from that point because we brought the energy on at the right time, and you need that type of energy off the bench, and I think there's not you don't get that with a lot of players, and I feel like a bit like I don't know, like teams of the past always have someone of impact to bring on and someone who can start in games and is able to fill in and do a job quite well, and I think Will Osula does that really well. So for me, he's definitely a centre forward slash right winger who could be um important in both places. So for me, I would definitely keep him. So if you bring in a striker, okay, shift him out wide, and he can be one of two wingers. If you bring in a winger, he can be one of two forwards. Like there's definitely an option to play him regularly within the team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think what makes him so unique is that he already is what the Premier League has evolved towards in recent years, which is the physical specimens, as we call them. But at the same time, I also think he has what the Premier League is evolving towards, which is more individualism, more unpredictability, more players who waive the tactical instructions of the coach when necessary and try and break a game open on their own accord and with their own ideas. I think Will Osula is a player like that as well, because he often looks like he himself doesn't even know what he's about to do, which is, I can imagine, extremely hard to defend for a defender. So that unpredictability, that chaos factor, when we, and I agree with you, we should be looking to sign a new winger in the summer as well. When we do, it has to be someone like a Ryan Cherki or a Jan Diomande who can break open a game themselves. Someone like an Alain Saint-Maximin, for example. That is where football is evolving towards, because every team is so unbelievably well drilled and well coached and up to date and formed with data, that those kind of players are what makes the difference. And I think where we have gotten stuck this season on quite a few occasions is the fact that Eddie normally doesn't necessarily like those players. But Pep Guardiola, for example, also doesn't like those players. And Luis Enrique, for example, also doesn't necessarily like those players. But we see that the best coaches do recognize the need to have at least one or two of those guys in your squad. And I think he could be one of those for us as well.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree with that.
All right. Before we get on to the second half, let's listen to what Paul's thoughts were on that first half.
So half-time, we actually win it. Over the moon. Delighted. We missed opportunities, but you've got to be in the positions to be able to miss opportunities in the first place. We've scored 2. Sense of relief, I think, around St James's Park, apart from anything else. I said on the pre-match that ultimately it's just about the 3 points, and that remains the case. Still fresh on the mind is the Chelsea game, the Spurs game, where we've thrown leads away. So I count nothing. I do not count chickens before the egg, or the egg before the chicken, or whatever it is. And that's the way I'll remain. I think, look, come out, second half, change nothing, go for it. Hopefully, be nice to keep a clean sheet. I know we've got a few hairy moments should it go. Be nice to keep a clean sheet, get a couple of more goals for the confidence, and let's finish the season off as strong as possible. So half time, 2 to the good, looking good for a massive, massive, massive 3 points.
And then for our thoughts on that second half, I think it could have been a lot less nervy than it actually turned out to be in the end. Jack Hinchelwood scored for Brighton. The fact that he scored doesn't necessarily reflect all too well on us, because, I mean, he never scores. But at the same time, what might even reflect even more poorly, and is something which also just leads back to Eddie Howe's team selection not necessarily being vindicated in every single position. we are still open defensively. Because if Jack Hinchelwood was an actual attacker, I think he would have scored 1 or 2 goals before Brighton eventually got one back. I remember really, really early on in the first half, he had a huge opportunity when Mitoma squared the ball around our 16-yard area. And from there on, Jack Hinchelwood was always this player floating around in between the midfield and the defense, and usually wasn't even marked. So that is another issue as well. Eddie Howe has talked about wanting to play a 6. Tonali isn't a 6. Bruno isn't a 6. We don't have a 6. And I don't want a Palinha type 6 because that usually always spells trouble, because those types of 6s mean you can't have a structured team because they always leave their position behind to go chasing a ball. But someone who offers a bit more stability, someone who offers defensive work and has talent on the ball. Unfortunately, the player who does fit that description to a T is Elliot Anderson, but he is going Manchester City.
That's where my head went as well. Yeah.
That is very unfortunate. He would, I genuinely believe he could make us a consistent Champions League outfit nearly all by himself. He would definitely make our midfield maybe the best in the league, but it's unfortunately not going to happen. But just that profile is what we're looking for, and got exposed to me yet again yesterday that we still don't have anyone in that profile. Even though, like I said before, Bruno was great, I thought Tonali had a bit of a difficult game with some passes, not finding teammates. He's had better ones this season, but also not necessarily enough to criticize. And I thought Joe Linton came back from his suspension quite good as well. But like I said, really nervy. We had one goal to defend. I think a lot of us saw it ending up like we've seen it end up a lot this season, with us again giving points away from a winning position. But at last, right before the end, Harvey Barnes with the freeing goal, with the breathing space, and securing the 3 points for us. What did you think about that second half?
Yeah, the second half was a bit of a roller coaster, really, because the goal comes from another bad distribution kick from Nick Pope as it goes straight at the opposition. He had a number in the game where it just went straight at the opposition, or he kicked it off a player and it hit the post. Like, you get that with Nick Pope and he's terrible kicking. But yeah, he kicks it out. But Brighton do a quick move when we're moving into defensive transition, and the catch with Hinchelwood with a good finish into the top of the net. But yeah, after that, I feel like there was a lot of like, oh, here we'll go again type thing, where it was just like, oh, we're gonna throw away another couple of points here. And I think after a couple of minutes, it really set in that Brighton were going to dominate the rest of the half. And Eddie moved into a back 5, bringing on Lewis Hall and putting Dan Burn into centre half alongside, alongside Chow and Botman. But yeah, we looked really shaky in possession stuff. Chow gave the ball away a couple of times. Dan Burn had a header that he just took off the centre forward for a cross. Where it was just panic setting in, and like, we've managed to get through that, which is a big thing. But we did right. We'll look a little bit before the end of the game, mint our miss of the season. Them tactically, they tried to change a couple of things. They swapped Minter over onto the other side a couple of times towards the end of the game, because he ran out a couple of play a couple of times against Lewis Smiley, so they changed him back over, and he got his chance at the end where he put it over the bar. So a road will look at times, but we managed to get that good break. Wissa came on, and barring his miss, he stretched the defence quite well. He was pressing the defence quite high and trying to win the ball back in that aspect, but he's missed yet another sitter, which goes against him. Like mentioned before, like, if a Fenerbahce comes in for 25 million for him, I'll just get him away. But yeah, it's a good end of the game, because we've managed to see a game out where we're having a lot of times this season.
Against the bogey team as well,
and-
which helps.
against a team that we're not usually strong against in Brighton at home. So yeah, it was a good moment. But I feel like obviously with the season being the way it is, I just wish that I'd have had that a little bit sooner in the season.
Absolutely.
Like I say, we did ride well luck at times, obviously with the Minte miss and stuff like that, being fundamental in we're going on to win the game 3-1 like we did. But yeah, it's obviously it's a good relief, great bit of composure from Barnes at the end. Wissa getting an assist from that, but a tidy finish from Barnes to see we're home. And yeah, once that had happened, it was home and hosed, 3 points, and takes us up to 45 points, I believe, which shouldn't see we get relegated, which is a relief if anything. Even after the game had finished, me and Paul waited until like the stadium was practically empty, just trying to take it all in. That it was just a massive relief because the past couple of weeks with Eddie Howe and with the in and out Eddie Howe and kind of the past couple of games being the way they've been, just a bit of a relief to see we'll win a game, and a bit of a relief just to be like, yeah, we're safe now and we can start looking toward next season and that as well without looking over our shoulder too much. So a massive relief to see we win. I didn't expect we to win against a very strong Brighton side who have European aspirations. But yeah, it's a good performance from Newcastle all around. I know we rode well up at times like I've mentioned, but yeah, to see we grind it out towards the end and show that little bit of quality that we needed to in the first half as well. You could really see that. So a big win. You could see what it meant to the players, the fans, and everything as well. So yeah, a good result, and hopefully we can take it into the last 3 games of the season and what has been a really frustrating season on a high.
Bang on. All right. I suggest we have a listen to what Paul's final thoughts were after the Brighton result as well.
Back to the car, last one out of the stadium, alongside Kyle, obviously. After Newcastle United win, we've won a game of football. Hey, fucking hell, we win 3-1, and that's a game that could have finished anything. It could have been 5-5. They could have pinched it. They could have nicked it. We could have scored more. We had chances. They had chances. Nick Pope riding on the seat of his pants at times. It was calamitous. It was all hands to deck. It wasn't pretty on the eye throughout the entire 90 minutes. There was so much nerves and apprehension in the second half when that goal went in. You're like, this is a movie. This is a rerun. I've watched this movie before. Is it Groundhog Day? I've seen us against Spurs. I've seen us against Chelsea. Please do not do it again today. But they didn't. They scrapped, they fought away, they found a way. Fuck all of the debate. Are you Eddie Howe in, Eddie Howe out? I just want to see Newcastle United win a game of football, and we got to see that today. I'm over the moon. I'm delighted. Some great performances I felt as well. Bruno is different gravy. We look so much better when he is back. Osula I thought was fantastic. He's got to be a shout for maybe wide right going forward. If we can get the striker in who does the business, he could play Osula out wide right, and I think he'd be absolutely spot on today. I mean, bless him. He was running, he was trying, he was full of energy. He was just an absolute and utter leader on the pitch. I think that's the best way to be able to say it. Brilliant set piece from Bruno to get onto the head of Dan Burn, scoring against his old club. Fantastic delivery by Bruno. Like I say, different class, different gravy, that lad. We look so much better when Bruno's in, when Bruno's fit, when Bruno's firing. Joe Linton putting a shift in as well. But yeah, a real team effort, I felt. It got us over the line. Like I say, it wasn't pretty at times, but it doesn't matter. You could argue that we looked probably better aesthetically against Arsenal and more, but we got out of it. Today, we got the 3 points. We're there or thereabouts safe. I think if Spurs lose tomorrow, we're mathematically safe. Look, I said we needed one more win. We're there or thereabouts. We're pretty much home and hosed and out of this situation. And let's just see what we can do in the last couple of games. If we can get those 3 wins out of the next 3 games with other priorities perhaps, then who knows? We could maybe scrape a top half finish, and that puts a little bit of respectability upon the season. And it allows us to go into the next season and pre-season feeling a little bit better about ourselves. It papers over the cracks. It allows us to go ahead, do recruitment, bring some more players in, and go again. But massive, massive victory for Eddie Howe. Massive, massive, massive victory for Newcastle United. No doubt in front of a fair few from the Saudi PIF. Eddie Howe's name getting sang around the stadium again, it must be said. And yeah, my voice isn't going to hold out. I want to pass you back over to Kyle and Ian for the rest of toonTALK's podcast, but just absolutely and utterly fucking delighted. What a feeling. Driving back down home now, a couple of hours before I'm back home, but on the back of getting a victory. That'll ding dang do for me. Happy days. One more game at home at St James's Park this season, and then we go into the summer and all the transfer speculation, which of course will be on Magpie 24/7 and our new Magpie meter. But yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to all of our accounts, to be fair. Happy days. Subscribe if you're happy that we have won a game of football. Happy days. Newcastle United winning by 3-1. Get in.
And then, as the final topic of today's podcast, we need to touch upon a report that has just come out right before we started recording from David Ornstein. He is reporting that Newcastle United have decided to stick and not to twist in terms of Eddie Howe. I'm straight away going to ask for your thoughts. This is not necessarily the question Eddie in or Eddie out. This is the question, do you think the board are making the right decision?
Well, they're sticking with their man, aren't they? And obviously, Eddie's done so many great things at the football club. This season has been really disappointing. I think in the league, we've been so bad. Like in a league where the league is so tight, and even though we've had as bad of a season, we're still like what 6 points off European places. You just think if we weren't as bad as we were, in the mistakes that we've made in terms of not being able to hold on to a lead successfully and stuff like that, you'd think that we'd be able to get further up the league. The 2 Derby defeats, it's been it's been a season. It's been a season of attrition. We've been really poor. It's been really frustrating a lot this season. Where for a lot of it, I don't think Eddie had the answers. I really don't. I think he's the answer to the frustration and the answer to our bad form is going with people he trusts, and the people he trusts is your Dan Burns and your Nick Popes and that of the world. So yeah, it's one where I was thinking maybe like I'd never wanted to be like on social media like saying like Eddie must go and adding to that online, but I thought honestly after Sunderland it might like if they said right we're going to make a change I wouldn't have been against it because it just didn't look like he had the ideas, especially but Barcelona away getting beat 7-2 and then losing against Sunderland when we just didn't when it was all we needed a response and it meant so much to everybody and that was the performance. So yeah, it has been a really frustrating season, but now that the club has made the decision of we're backing Eddie Howe, then okay, get behind Eddie Howe because whether you think rightly or wrongly on Eddie Howe staying or going, he's still so highly thought of within the club and he's still highly thought of among supporters. It's just, I feel like for a lot of supporters, Eddie's let a lot of supporters down this season because he's fell way below the standards that he set himself as a manager at this club. So hopefully the club aren't making a mistake because this season has been really poor. But time will tell. It's a case of what we're going to do in terms of recruitment. I hope if, like I said to you on the last podcast, Ian, one or two extremes needs to happen. And that the 2 extremes that I mentioned was Eddie Howe had to go, or they had to have a massive overhaul with the recruitment to where they're bringing in players from all over the world. They're not spending 55 million on your Wissers of the world again. They're not spending 41 million on your Jacob Ramseys again, your 55 millions on your Anthony Elangas again. We cannot have that kind of summer again. Because recruitment wise, shambolic. Performances this season from Eddie Howe's Newcastle United haven't been great either. And barring like a couple of nights to shout about in the Europe in the Champions League where we've beat Union SG, where we've beaten Karabag, where we've beaten Bilbao, Benfica. They are good nights, but with the amount of money that we've invested into the team, that should be the bare minimum. So for me, there has been a couple of good performances this season. PSG away, being the standout, especially how many goals they're scoring in the competition this season. Um, the home draw against Barcelona were played really well. The last minute winner from Osula against Man United. There has been a couple of moments this season, but it just hasn't been enough good performances. But if there is one man that can turn it around, you'd hope it would be Eddie Howe going into the summer. But I'm hoping if Eddie Howe's staying, which looks to be the case now, there is an overhaul within the recruitment because we can't have that again. We need players coming in with different profiles that can change games of football. Some have more technical ability, so in games where we're against low blocks, we can deal with that more efficiently. And just having different profiles and hopefully Eddie's learned the lessons from this season because the things that have been going against him, some of them have been his fault. Like you look at the team selections where certain people get picked, as we've mentioned earlier on the podcast. Um, when things have gone wrong, there seems to be a severe lack of plan B. In games where we'll go 2-1 down with 2 minutes to go, and then he'll be like, "All right, okay, I need to react to this," rather than being proactive. Like you look against Sunderland as an example, the writing was on the wall from 60 minutes that they were pushing for wins, didn't answer to it at all until they went 2-1 up. That's just one of many examples. The mentality of the team needs to change when we take the lead. The mentality of the team needs to change in general in terms of what Eddie can bring. Because when we come out of half time, we'll look half asleep most of the time. Yesterday includes that, where we just didn't look on the ball at all. So yeah, I think a lot of things need to change, but the credit in the bank that has been there in the past with Eddie Howe, obviously winning the Carabao Cup, previous seasons where we've done really well. I think that credit's totally null and void now. I think it is literally how can we do going into the start of the season. If we don't start the season well, then it puts it into question yet again because he would have another summer of transfers, another summer of recruitment, another summer on the training ground and stuff like that. So you'd hope from this point that lessons are learned because if they're not learned and we'll go into the season with the exact same tactic, the exact same way of playing, the exact same philosophies and stuff like that, the exact same recruitment, the exact same type of profiles, we're going to repeat ourselves and we're going to be here again next season, mate. So, like I says in the previous podcast, one of them two extremes needs to happen. The club have got behind Eddie Howe, so therefore they need to overhaul the recruitment and give that support to be able to bring players in, good profiles, can help Eddie Howe more with that, and then hopefully next season we can hit the ground running and go from there. Because I think, in my opinion, questions have been asked to Eddie Howe and rightfully so this season, but the club have made a decision. Will it be the right one? Time will tell. But hopefully the lessons have been learned from the manager, the players, and of course the owners as well. So the owners have backed the manager. They've got to back him in the transfer market with a new recruitment strategy and stuff like that, and then go from there. And hopefully next season we can make a push for European competitions again. Because I don't think it's acceptable when you've got Hopkinson saying, "Oh, we want to be one of the competing teams on all fronts by 2030," and then have a season like this. It just contradicts everything. So next season they need to be at it, need to have a good transfer window, and show a statement of intent because it's the second time now where this has happened, where we've had European football, we've struggled in the league, and we're not going to qualify for it again. So they're going to back the manager. They're going to give him another chance to qualify for Europe. But until we have a season in Europe and qualify for Europe from that, there's always going to be question marks around can the manager compete on all fronts. So yeah, the jury is out for me. I think there's still situations and there's still questions that need to be answered from Eddie Howe and from the players and stuff. But hopefully it's a good summer and hopefully it's a good start to the next season, because we do go into the new season with a lot of question marks, being like, can Eddie do it?
Well, I've had about 45 minutes now to simmer on the news, and I must admit, the more I think about it, the more I think I agree with the board's decision, which is somewhere I didn't necessarily think I was going to fall, because I was very much doubting Eddie Howe as well, especially not necessarily last week, because Arsenal is a game you can always lose, but after the Bournemouth and the Palace results, I think everybody was doubting Eddie Howe. And I do think you raise a very, very good question, and one which Eddie Howe hasn't yet answered is, can he actually cope with multiple competitions at the same time? Can he actually cope with an English club who is in a European competition? Because at the start of this season, he was asked that very question, because the first time we went into the Champions League, we faced the same problem. And he assured everybody that he learned from his mistakes from 2 years ago and they will do things differently. And we have to say that things have gotten even worse this season compared to 2 seasons ago. So that is very much something something for which the blame has to be laid at Eddie's feet, in my opinion. But Eddie has also shown to be a manager who can improve upon his deficiencies in the past. His Bournemouth team, for example, was very well known for not being able to defend. His first successful Newcastle team, the team he got into the Champions League for the first time, was the second or third best defense in the league. He went and studied under Diego Simeone, which is another reason why I'm so sad we didn't reach the Champions League quarterfinals, because I think that would have been a personal career highlight for Eddie to face Diego Simeone in the Champions League quarterfinal. But I mean, with all of those things, he has shown in the past that he is open to improving himself. I also think one of the main reasons why you wouldn't want to continue with Eddie Howe is because of the transfer window we have had over the summer. Well, like you said, Ross Wilson and David Hopkinson have just come in, and that's completely their responsibility from now on. So if that really is the way the club will be run in the future, and that is the modern way that football clubs should be run, then I think by all means Eddie Howe should be given another opportunity to actually do his job in a stable environment where there are people around him who support him and don't necessarily give him more work to do and more things to focus on. Because I think if Eddie didn't have to stress all summer about will he or won't he have Alex Isak for the start of the season, will he have a recognized number 9 for the start of the season, then he could have actually made a lot more use out of preseason as well. The same could be said for players arriving sooner in the transfer window. So that's another thing that needs to happen this transfer window. Eddie needs to have all summer to prepare this team for next season. And I would also like us to get at least some sort of European football. We are 5 points behind Conference League places. I think even less points if Aston Villa win the Europa League, because then those positions might even move up one more and could be 9th, which gets European football. And I'll have a look at how many points we are behind the 9th position. Also 5. 9th is Chelsea. So
Nice.
yeah, exactly. So I do think there are a lot of reasons as to why I can understand Eddie Howe being given another opportunity. Also, I hate the fact that managers get sacked so much in not even just English football, in European football in general. I am really, really proud of this club being represented by an English manager, the very best English manager in the game right now, and one of the longest serving Premier League managers that there are at this moment. I think Mikel Arteta, Pep Guardiola are the only ones who are serving longer.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah, I think so too. I think last season Thomas Frank was the only one who still was ahead of him, but now he made the move to Tottenham and is without a club even. So I think Eddie Howe does make the top three of that list, and you don't make those kind of top threes if you're not a world-class manager. The last point I want to make on why I would keep Eddie Howe as well is I think if we don't, he's off to either Man United or Chelsea in the summer, which also tells you something about the caliber of coach, how highly rated he is within the industry. And I also don't think we will find a coach that has the same connection with this group of players and with the supporters, especially as quickly in what is a turbulent time for the club. And when we are going to have a massive rebuild like we are going to have over the coming summer, having some stability, like for example in your coaching staff, might not actually be the worst idea in the world. The only problem is you leave yourself with the opportunity that things don't improve and things go tips up at the beginning of next season, and you might end up throwing away another season, by which point Vision 2030 is pretty much completely unachievable. So it is a risk. I'm not blind to that, but like I said, the more I think about it, the more I actually think I would do the same thing and come to the same conclusion if I was the Newcastle board.
Yeah. In terms of the decision made, I suppose time will tell.
That's
Whether
exactly
they've
it.
made the right decision or not. Like you say, it's a massive risk, but that, like I have mentioned, it's the summer is so important. Like, we've got to see movement in the transfer market quickly. We need to get these signings over the line, and we need to really hone in on that, because if we fail to do so, then if we start the next season really poorly, then I don't think there's many more arguments that can be made for Eddie Howe. I think if he starts next season poor, then I don't know. Like, it's two transfer windows where he's been heavily backed. We've managed to get worse over the season, and it'd be hard to argue for Eddie. But like, for me, I want Eddie to do well. He's still a manager I hold in really high regard, as frustrating as this season's been, and I back him to turn it round. But like I said, this kind of season can't happen again. It really can't. Like, this season's been terrible across the board. So hopefully lessons have been learned.
Completely agreed. All right. Now we're finishing off, I suppose. As a final bit of fun on this week's episode, I actually wanted to take a trip down to the second tier because yesterday it was the last game week of the championship season, meaning we can now congratulate Coventry and Ipswich on returning to the Premier League. Something I mean, Ipswich we saw last season, but I quite like Ipswich. But I'm really excited to see Frank Lampard's Coventry in the big time. And there's also the playoffs, which now have been decided to be Hull City versus Millwall and Middlesbrough versus Southampton. So out of those teams, I wanted to ask you, who would you like to see come up most as the third promoted side?
Yeah, I think out of the teams who I think will get promoted, I think going into the playoffs, mate, is a momentum game. I'd like to see Hull come up because they're one of the closer teams, and I've been to Hull twice as an away fan and haven't seen them lose. So there's that. But honestly think out of the teams that are in the playoffs, I think Southampton will come up
I think
because
so too.
they've had a really good second half of the season, and they've got the experience of the playoffs as well previously. So I think Southampton will come up through the playoffs, because Aston Villa showed it a few years ago when they win the playoffs. Like, they got rid of Steve Bruce. They had a manager bounce under Dean Smith, and they managed to get through the Premier League through a good bit of form. So yeah, I think form's a bit of everything. The anomaly in that is Sunderland, because they lost their last 5 league games and
Yeah.
then managed to get through the playoffs.
Yeah,
through
but they knew they were going to be in the playoffs for like 3 months, so they had time to prepare, right?
yeah,
And even then
that's
they
true. But
absolutely shithoused it because let's be honest, they didn't play well in really either of the playoff games, but left it late.
Yeah, they keep. They're so plucky. It's unbelievable, like how they play so bad
Mm-hmm.
all season. Yet last season they managed to get through the playoffs, and then this season they've managed to. They may finish above, or they may not. Obviously it's 2 points because of the results this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
but like
And we've
they've
got
just had
we've got
such a
Forest
strange
next
season.
week, and they have Manchester United next week. So in
Yeah.
if
I mean,
everything is right, we should really jump them.
we've got a good record in the at the City ground, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they'll be knocked off the Europa League games.
I'd
So
imagine so, yeah.
who knows? But yeah, I think hopefully we can take yesterday's win and go into the rest of the season and get something out of it and finish above them as one
Mm-hmm.
kind of little bit of a win towards the end of the season, because it's been such a terrible season, and I think Sunderland fans have just described their season as really positive. So to finish above them would still be something, I suppose. Obviously, we should be finishing above them anyway because of the difference in teams.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been such a underperformance season where you take anything, I suppose.
Exactly. And the reason I also am keeping a very close eye on the playoffs is because I actually do tip Sunderland to be very much within a shout of going down next season if they don't have a very big transfer window. Because let's be completely honest here, and I might sound like a jealous Newcastle fan, I genuinely don't care. If the Robin Roofs did not look like prime Gianluigi Buffon for the first 10 to 12 game weeks of the season, Sunderland would have been within a shout of relegation, because from November onwards they have been playing like a relegation side. And I say that fully aware of the fact that both derbies have been within that period. And I still stand by my statement, because within those derbies we played like a relegation side as well. So Sunderland could be very much within a shout of going down next season, and I'll be having my popcorn out for it. As for the playoff teams, which are the teams we then have to rely upon, because I have my doubts about Coventry. Ipswich could do quite well. I think Southampton could do really well. Borough, I would like to see Middlesbrough come up. It's a bit of a derby, but they are perennial promotion bottlers, so let's not hold our breath there. Millwall's or Alex Neil's Millwall are actually a really fun team. They are really exactly the image I would have of a Millwall team: rigid, hard to beat, very well organized. And then there's Hull, which is just the absolute wild card in these playoffs. I made at the start of the season on one of my personal channels a championship prediction video in which I had Hull to go down, because they were at that point on a transfer
Wow.
embargo. Yep, they were on a transfer embargo. There were a lot of other analysts picked to go down. They couldn't sign any players. They couldn't even sign any loan players. They got the embargo lifted right before the end of the summer and signed Ollie McBurney on a free, who has been probably the signing of the season in the championship. He has been unbelievable. So Hull City are an absolute nutcase of a football club. Their owner is also, I think, a majority shareholder in Fenerbahce. So seeing them come up would probably be really, really entertaining as well.
Yes.
All right, I reckon that's where we are going to leave it for today. Would you like to add anything else to what we've talked about on this pod?
Nah, mate. I think it's been a good podcast as always. It's obviously nice to speak about a win for a change, because the last couple
Yeah.
I've been on has been after a loss. But yeah, and obviously with a bit of clarity as well from the football club saying that Eddie's staying. So I think fans can not worry about is he staying, is he going, and just kind of like back the manager going into the last couple of games of the season, really. But yeah, it's been a big weekend for Newcastle in the season, with a lot decided and a lot of things that have happened. But yeah, it's hopefully now a big summer ahead, and then we can start focusing on the next season as well.
That's exactly it, mate. Alright, for anybody who has listened to this on Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you watch this on YouTube, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Are you happy with Eddie Howe staying? Please make sure to let us know. Head on over to Magpie 24/7 on social media as well. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you know the drill. And we would like to see you in next week's episode. Have a good one.